Hi guys, how are you doing? This is Sebastian from techcentury and welcome to this video. Now when I returned a couple of weeks ago, I asked you guys what videos you want to see, and one of the mostly requested videos was why I switched from Mac to Windows. Now there's a lot I want to cover in this video, and I recorded it a couple of minutes ago and I noticed it just going on and on and on, so I'll divide this in two parts. So the first part today will just be about my switch from Mac to Windows and why I switched. And then the second part will be about why I don't switch back to Mac, even though I kind of want to. So now let's get started. First, for those that don't know, I've owned Macs for like the last 10 to 15 years. I purchased like a 27-inch iMac around, probably like 12 years ago. And ever since then I had Macs, and I loved especially video editing, first with iMovie and then upgrading to Final Cut Pro. And I always felt like Macs were perfect for video editing and that they suit my style of editing very well, which is admittedly pretty basic, but just the performance overall and also just the software that worked so well with the hardware was a major reason why I didn't even consider switching to Windows. Now I always had like a Windows machine on the side for gaming and stuff like that, but I never ever felt like really wanting to switch over for all my video editing, despite the Alienware machines that I had being on paper so much faster than my Macs that I had. But then, as you probably noticed, around like 2 years ago, I stopped with producing YouTube videos. And a couple of weeks or months after I made this decision, I just felt like it didn't really make sense to keep my really expensive Apple hardware when it comes to Macs. So I had the Trashcan Mac Pro entry-level configuration, and I also had the MacBook Pro 15-inch with Retina display 2015 edition, which was probably the last really good MacBook in my opinion. And I just decided to sell them. And I think for both machines I got like in total 3,500 euros. So they really kept their value very, very well, and that's always a good aspect. If you purchase Apple hardware, they barely lose any value, no matter if they're 2 or 3 years old. And then, believe it or not, I didn't even have a PC or Mac for probably like half a year. So I basically just did everything I had to do, which was mainly like browsing the web, watching YouTube and sending emails, all on my phone, and it worked. And I didn't really miss having a machine, also because I'm now again full-time employed, and there I have an iMac 5K, so that probably also was part of this. And then after a couple of months, I did feel like I needed a machine again, and I wanted to have something portable, so I was looking for a laptop, and Macs weren't out of the equation, so I wasn't like, oh no, I'm never gonna buy a Mac or anything. But I was just looking for good value, and especially ever since Apple relaunched the MacBooks with the butterfly keyboard, which is probably like the worst thing that they've ever done. Oh yeah, and stripping all the ports. MacBooks just weren't really an alternative. They were far too expensive for what I needed. They were just not reliable enough, and I didn't really want to bother with like a keyboard that fails, I don't know, when I'm out of warranty, and you never knew whether there would be a huge replacement program like there is right now, or if Apple would even acknowledge that there would be an issue with the keyboard. And also, just to type on, I feel like the butterfly switches just suck. So yeah, MacBooks were out of the equation, and therefore I was looking for a Windows laptop that kind of had all the other traits of the MacBook that I would miss. So good build quality, a good keyboard, like from the old MacBooks, a good display, and just good battery life, and just being very portable. And in the end, I actually only just found one machine that really hit all the marks for me, and that was the first generation Surface laptop. So I purchased this is the i5 configuration with 256 gigabytes of storage and also 8 gigs of RAM. And I purchased this, I don't know, like used here in Germany for 600 or 700 euros. So it was pretty cheap, and I have to say it didn't let me down once. It's an absolutely amazing machine. I still have it, so I have it now for over a year, maybe 1.5 years even. And The keyboard just feels great. I really love the Alcantara finish on the inside. I was kind of worried about it like getting stained or nasty, but probably also because I don't use the machine a ton. It still looks like on the first day, so that's very good. The display is also amazing, has a good brightness, also is touch, which we'll never see on the MacBooks, for example. And it has a few ports, not a ton, but at least it has like a USB type A, and that's definitely a big advantage for me. So overall, I have to say this was probably one of the best decisions that I ever made. For like 700 years, this machine, in my opinion, is unrivaled. And again, it just kind of feels like a MacBook, even though it's a Windows machine. And I also have to say that Windows 10 as an operating system, in my opinion, is just hugely improved over previous versions, and this switch for me wasn't really that big of a deal. Now, for the most part, I didn't really plan to edit any videos on there, and I didn't really bother with it. But now when I returned to YouTube, of course, that was something that I had to keep in mind. So I was looking for good video editing software, and I pretty much instantly kind of got to the conclusion that I had to try DaVinci Resolve, especially because the main version is free, and I really don't need the more advanced features that you will find just if you pay like 300 euros for the upgrade. And DaVinci Resolve runs well on this machine, especially for everything that's in full HD. It works absolutely fine. Once I go to 4K, especially like with the Osmo Pocket with 4K 60, yeah, you can forget about it. This machine isn't the right one for it. And I think it's not only the CPU, but it's also really the RAM that's maxed out and really makes the performance awful. So yeah, but usually like every year or so, I really feel like I want to play strategy games. So I always end up buying a gaming machine, a gaming desktop PC, and usually that's an Alienware. I think I had already like 3 or 4 Alienwares, always ended up selling them because I never used them. And when I had an iMac, for example, or the Mac Pro, I also didn't really want to bother to use them for video editing either. So now I was like, okay, 4K 60 shouldn't be an issue on my Alienware with the i7, the GTX 1060 and so on. But it wasn't really performing well. But the big advantage here being I can just pop the case open, purchase 8 additional gigabytes of RAM from Amazon for like 35 years, have it delivered the same day, upgrade it to 16 gigabytes in like 5 minutes, and the performance is hugely improved. So now I can edit 4K 60 material from the Osmo Pocket on the Alienware machine, and it works pretty fine. And I also paid like 700 euros for it with like 3 years of warranty left. So that was also a pretty good value, especially if you just look at the desktop machines from Apple. They just don't compare. And of course they all thermal throttle, except if you spend like 6,000 euros or 7,000 euros on the new Mac Pro. But this is where the second part is for, because I kind of feel betrayed by Apple. Now I know this just completely over-exaggerated, but still that's kind of how I feel, because their MacBook and Mac lineup overall is just so bad, and I don't know how we got here, because it was so amazing around like 2015 and I absolutely loved it, and to me it feels like they screwed everything up. So yeah, but this is what the next video is for. I really want to hear what you guys have to say. Maybe you also made the switch from Mac to Windows, or maybe the other way around, from Windows to Mac. Let me know, and I'll definitely read your comments to see what you guys have to say. Thanks for watching, and I really hope to see you next time.